Good morning. It's Friday, November 27th, the day after Thanksgiving. Got the construction crew back on task just outside my window working on the deck, so if I'm peering off looking distracted, it's because I am. Or if you hear some of their joyful banter or cutting or hammering or whatever in the background, that's what that is. Thanksgiving was really good. I spent the first part of the day cooking a couple healthy-ish items. Everything, of course, is organic and well-sourced. When I say well, I mean farms whose practices I trust. The ones where I guess I should say it. For the ingredients, I knew the farmer. There are a few things where I didn't know the farmer for sure. Tapioca powder, for instance, that went into my green bean casserole. But organic, regenerative farming practices when possible, pasture-raised animals when possible, yada yada yada. This entry isn't about that. I guess it is about that. It's about all the things in my life. I guess I'm leading up to an idea that I know I want to talk about. But first, I want to share about my Thanksgiving. So, did my cooking and went and ate with my dad at the house that I grew up in. Which is interesting because for probably a decade, I didn't go and visit that house because it carried such tough memories from growing up. And that's for another post as well. Entry, post, potato. I did make some delicious mashed potatoes. They were purple. They look like Play-Doh. It was awesome. So yeah, I got together with my dad and, despite the fact we were wearing masks so he would feel more comfortable, and despite a little bit of tense conversations about our differing opinions about the virus and the pandemic and whether or not the fear is warranted or not. I think we were able to be very loving and at least I feel like I was able to, both of us really, but from my own part, I feel like I was able to respect his opinion and be able to hold a different one for myself as well, and also speak my truth without having to insist that he bend or change his mind to my truth, which is so often the case when it comes to disagreement. For me anyway, in my experience. And so we ate and we had some of the things that are kind of a tradition for us that aren't necessarily the healthiest, but great for my soul. There's this sparkling, super sweet apple cider vinegar, not apple cider vinegar. Ew. That wouldn't be very tasty in a glass by itself. But this sparkling apple cider that we always have with my grandma. Other than that, just what I brought. And my dad made the turkey and had some box stuffing, some gravy. But not a ton of, no dessert really besides what I brought. It was like a pumpkin chia pudding with coconut milk as its base. So, all in all, pretty healthy. We went through a bunch of Christmas decorations that he shared with me from my grandma's house. Took some back here, and so I've got some more lights to hang up around my apartment. Some wrapping paper for presents. So it was nice. We We talked about all sorts of things. Looked at pictures. He played a song on the piano. It's kind of a jazzy version of a Christmas song, which is nice. He's a fantastic pianist. It's nice to hear him play. So it was really lovely. I'm really grateful I got to be with him. He's got such a big heart. And the thing that we talked about that is on my mind today is this just idea of, I guess, fear of doing anything differently. This is not digested at all, so besides, at least out loud or on paper, not in recent history. It's about showing up for ourselves. So, let me give an example. My dad's house, the one I grew up in, we moved there when I was 6. It was the house that he and my mom, I remember them fighting a lot in. It's the house they were living in when they decided to get divorced. But at any rate, he, the bathroom, he's been doing projects, yes, on the house for as long as I can remember. Mainly superficial ones. I know he's been wanting to do some bigger ones, like just redoing that bathroom, and it's been so long now at this point that it's been the way it is, since I was pretty much just a kid. 20 years at least. And it's gone so long now that it just feels so overwhelming to him. He was telling me, he's like, he knows that he could just spend like 20 minutes a day on it. And, it wouldn't get done super quick, but it would get done. Like, he understands that. And he's like, I just don't know why I don't do it. And I totally resonate with that. I've been thinking about why it's so scary for me from a work standpoint to show up and do the work when it comes to work, whether it's working for someone else or building my own business, it's showing up and doing it. And I think there's a lot of layers that go into that, threads in the sweater, so to speak. And one is just fear of it not being perfect, whatever that means. It's just fear of not doing as well as I would like to think I could do. If I keep, for lack of a better word, sabotaging myself, if I never take action on it, or if I spread myself among so many different activities that I always have an out, then I never have to say that I gave my all and it wasn't good enough for my own standard, because it's always my own, or what I think others would admire and respect in me. And then the respect for myself degrades, and I feel like I can't show up for myself. I can't trust or rely on myself. And that shows up in relationships. I project that onto others. Thank you very much. And I remember even like as a little kid, my mom and I were talking about this, how I'd start singing a song, a Disney song or something. And even within the first like 3 or 4 notes, if it didn't seem perfect to me, I'd want to stop and start over. when I was developing my handwriting in 7th and 8th grade, I would start handwriting a paper, and if within the first few lines it didn't seem perfect, the handwriting, then I would crumple it up in a ball and I threw it on the floor. And I think the most powerful illustration of this, and the one that gives me the most hope, is a rather embarrassing story. It's a story that until this week I hadn't told anyone, but it just kind of popped up in my head, and it's been sitting there, and it's been poking at me as important to remember and to share for anyone who can relate. So it's the same example of feeling like I'm not going to get it perfectly. So my first one of my first competitive sports was running, and it's the one I'm most passionate about. And when I started running, it was really mainly to lose weight, like any 7th grade girl wants to do these days. And I also, it ended up becoming like kind of a social thing for me in high school, you know, and I was pretty good at it, and our team was really good. And I believe this was 9th grade. We were doing really well as a team, and we were going to go to our first, this is the only one I can remember from high school, out of state meet to help prepare us for like higher level races. And this to date was my biggest athletic venture ever. So we went to Raleigh, North Carolina. I remember it was cross country season, so it was fall, and I was used to running in the cooler weather. We went down to North Carolina where it was a lot warmer. And I remember, again, because I was trying to maintain a certain standard of weight, being very thin. I think I was like 110 pounds, same height I am now, 5'6". I'm 135 now, you know, with good muscle, healthy muscle, and a healthy level of body fat. I was trying to maintain a standard of beauty that I thought was the most important thing at that age, at that time. And so I say all this because it was hot and I was undernourished for sure. And so I remember starting this race, the gun going off, and about halfway through just could barely tolerate just how weak I felt, disoriented, woozy, because it was so hot and I was so malnourished. And I started to feel myself slow down, and I started to feel the shame and fear kick in that I wasn't going to finish at a time that I could be proud of. Here's where the fun part comes in. I thought all of those reasons added up for a very viable story for me to just pass out during this race. So I started to gradually make my way toward the edge of the trail, and, you know, kind of gained a sense of who was around me, and let myself kind of tumble to the ground, and laid there and closed my eyes and waited for someone on a gator to come pick me up, you know, telling them my sad story of how I passed out. I haven't told anyone this. I've been too embarrassed, and I frankly forgot about it for a really long time. But at the time, it was almost to the point where I believed my lie that I had passed out, because I could not bear the thought of me feeling like I was trying my best and not getting the time that I wanted. Hilarious. Hilarious. And I try to think of ways that I do that today where it's not too big of a stretch, where, like I said before, I'll have so many balls in the air at once. It makes for a very viable excuse if I can't follow through on something. gotten good at creative, believable excuses. And for the most part, they get bought. And I've had instances where they weren't bought, where I'd sit down with former employers who like have that heart to heart with me, where they say they see such greatness in me, and why am I sabotaging myself? Why do I keep breaking my own heart? Not showing up? Partly because it's all I know. Almost all I know. And I'll tell you the reason that fake pass out story is suddenly really inspiring to me, at least the last day or so, is even though that's how my running career started out, and there were definitely seasons there in high school where I would just, I wouldn't show up for races, or I would again have a heart-to-heart with my coach about why I wasn't fully applying myself. Even though that's how it started out, I have now, to this date, run countless races, far more important and prestigious than that one. I've qualified for the Boston Marathon and ran it. I completed an Ironman in New Zealand. I went to USA Triathlon Nationals for college 2 times and got invited back a third. I couldn't that year. I don't think since that day that I've ever not finished a race. Ever. And my times are not always the best. No way. To think you could do better every single time is preposterous. Or to think that you could win when there's that many people in the game. Don't get me wrong, I've placed well, but not always. My first marathon was very average at best. I've done 13 of them. And I say all that not to brag, maybe build myself up a little bit, because it reminds me that even though my running career started out like that, I still flourished for decades after that. And I think what shifted for me with running was, when I first, told you, when I first started running, it was to lose weight and for social status and a sense of belonging. And eventually, I think that what shifted it for me was I ran a marathon. I ran my first marathon just because I wanted to see if I could do it. And I didn't think I was going to do any more of them. My second marathon was for my high school sweetheart. It was to raise money for him and his family because he'd been in a terrible accident. He actually lost his leg. That was a horrifying, terribly challenging part of my life, and changed his life forever, his family, and my life, because that day I was running for someone else. It wasn't for me. And so just helped me pull a strength and an endurance and a dedication out of myself that I had never had before. I would get up before dawn and go to the gym at my college at Ohio State and do my running workouts. And it became its own passion. It fueled itself. And I can't say that every single race that I do, I have others in mind. And I also can recall many times when I felt like quitting in the midst of really hard races. I've cried. Some of them, like an Ironman, takes 12 plus hours. Maybe one day less than 12. But I think of others, and I wouldn't want to. I would remember the hardships other people go through, and that what I'm doing now is temporary, nearly a drop in the bucket of what those people are going through. That perspective helps me. And so that example of my running career, my endurance, inspires me to see how I can make that same shift with regards to my work. Remember that I'm not going to win the race of work. It's all about the journey and the day-to-day that goes into it. And there will be moments, not as probably definitive, maybe, as those races. I bet there will be. I was just thinking about that. Races are very immersive, and you have this whole, like, all of this training just pinnacles in this beautiful event when you start and finish. Like, what do I have like that with work? Like, certainly work can imitate the day-to-day of putting in the miles and the reps and all of that, the practice of it. I guess for me, for my business, it could be like the retreats or the events that I put on as like finish lines. Maybe launching courses. Maybe giving speeches. Certainly when I gave that speech at Xavier, it felt like a finish line. I had that same euphoria. I loved that. I don't know what that looks like in my current day job, though. Maybe it's just treating each day as a little race. I don't know. The point is, I'm getting granular. The point is, I do know how to show up for myself, to not break my heart, and to trust that when it's time will come. And hopefully for my dad too, with that bathroom and anything else that he's wanting to do in his life. So it's gotten long today. Those are all my thoughts. Thank you for being here. Love you. Bye-bye.